Hello, good evening, and welcome to the joint community meeting between Queen Village Neighbors Association and Society Hill Civic Association. My name is Eleanor Ingersoll, and I am president of QVNA, and I'm very happy to be co-hosting with President Larry Spector of Society Hill Civic Association. We are very happy, as I'm checking the numbers, to say that we have a registered 500 participants tonight, and it is growing currently from 235 up as I speak. A reminder that if you have questions, we ask that you put them into the chat and we will get to them as quickly and as best we can. We will also be streaming this live on Facebook, so you can feel free to join us there as well. And there, as always, there will be a recording that will be circulated to the public in days after. Tonight, this evening, we are happy to share the Zoom floor with Councilman Mark Squilla, as well as Captain Ed Appleton, Commanding Officer of Police Radio. As we wait for the councilman to join us,
you there, Mark?
I'm going to pass it off to Larry Spector, who I believe is welcoming the councilman as we speak. There are many issues on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
Including the pandemic relief funds headed to the city, gun violence, zoning, and ATV and illegal vehicles. The councilman is here, but first and foremost, I'd like to introduce my co-sponsor, Larry Spector, who will unmute himself so you can hear him.
Hello, everybody. I really think it's a good union of an audience made up by members of the Society Hill Civic Association and Queen Village Neighbors Association. We have a lot in common, common concerns, common desires. And so we put this together, and we can justifiably say, I think, that certainly with the current administration, Mark Squilla is our man. He is the person who speaks for the mayor, or at least for city council. And so we're always interested in what he has to say. Mark, I want to give you the opportunity to answer questions, which I know is your preferred manner of going about these things. But look, it's been an interesting summer. We've all had to survive Delta. We've all had to survive Ida. And I want to give you an opportunity to just say hello to everybody. And we're regrouped as a way of getting us started. I thought I might just generally ask you, what the hell are you doing all day these days?
Well, I'm still in the office, so it's been a lot of stuff going on, obviously, not just here in Society Hill and Queen Village, but throughout the district. You know, we, as the summer rolls off and the fall is here today, council has started last week back up. And so it doesn't mean that there's additional work, but there is days on Thursdays where your time is sort of driven by our council session. You know, we have priorities that we're looking to address this year, obviously, but still the issues of quality of life have been some of the biggest that we've had since I've been in office. Safety concerns are of the utmost concern from not only this area, but like I said, throughout my district and throughout the city of Philadelphia. It just seems to, we have been getting more and more emails and messages about short dumping, litter, amongst the bigger issues of gun violence, crime, drug dealing activity, homeless, addiction services on the street, and things like that. So it's been pretty hectic, starting, I would say, starting from like mid-June throughout the summer and currently going forward. So, you know, we did introduce that legislation last year after one of these meetings and had support moving forward for hoping to help with enforcement. There has been, as far as the ATV concerns, that's just one part of it. The issue is not only ATVs and dirt bikes that are illegal and already illegal on the streets and how we deal with confiscating them. But then we have the noise issues that have been circulating with these boom cars and modified mufflers, both on vehicles and on motorcycles. Plus the amplified sound systems that have been installed in some of these slingshots and even, souped up cars, and how we're dealing with that. Recently, I just sent something over to the law department that was introduced in New York, and it seems like a pretty good idea. It won't solve the problem, but it'll be a part of the puzzle, I think, to start to see a decrease in a lot of these quality of life noise problems. And it is a system that sort of works like the red light camera, except it records the decibel levels. And it takes a picture of a vehicle that was playing the music or had a modified muffler system and how loud it was, and that if it goes over a certain decibel level, it's recorded, and then a ticket could be issued by being reviewed by the authorities and then sent out in the mail. Now, this works for vehicles with license plates, obviously, that are legally done, but we're having problems with both legal vehicles and illegal vehicles. So this would be just targeted to the legal vehicles. Law department is reviewing it now to see if we need state legislation, enabling legislation to do that. But we still need to work on our enforcement of our current laws, and that's been part of the challenge. I could probably, people are going to have questions probably about ATVs and what is going on with them. They'll have questions about, I would say, the issue of homeless on the streets, encampments, and addiction services, and what are we doing about that. So I could get into that, or I could allow questions to be asked, and you guys could ask them, and we will try to answer them the best we can.
Yes, we certainly do have questions, Mark, on that subject. We might as well get that out of the way.
Okay.
There's a lot of frustration that the law is not enforced. And I'd like you to comment on that and tell us what the prospects are for actually doing something about this problem.
All right, well, the encampment policy we worked on with the, what problem are you?
We're talking about the noise and the ATV.
Oh, the noise, all right, yeah.
I got to tell you, I know Eleanor Ingersoll has had some interesting conversations with representatives of other registered community associations, and the movement is underway to make this a real voting issue. Because it's so citywide. Unfortunately, correct me if I'm wrong, the election in 2022 doesn't cover mayor, doesn't cover anybody in city council. So it's hard to see how the votes can be brought to bear, at least next spring, on this subject. Maybe you'll tell me otherwise, but
yes.
What can you tell us about why things aren't enforced that are on the books? We can all use our imagination, but I want to hear it from you.
Right. I mean, obviously, we see police around these areas, and we see people still committing these violations, illegal acts, and sort of lack of enforcement. We did have a detail, as you know, that was confiscating vehicles and working in a way to try to deter that activity. But unfortunately, you can't do that periodically. It has to be something that we need to do consistently, and we have to make it a priority. It's not a priority for the administration right now. But you said 2022 doesn't matter. It does matter, because if it becomes a voting issue in 2022, even though we're not running, and even though the mayor's not running, people are looking to run for mayor and run for council. And one of those ideas on how we're going to address this moving forward need to be put into everybody's conversation. So it's not a waste of time to make it a voting issue, and it's not a waste of time to make it a part of a scenario where people have to answer that question everywhere they go. There's legislation that we can introduce, but there's also legislation that's currently on the books, and how are we planning to enforce that legislation? If it's not a priority, by the administration and they deem it not necessary to add resources to, we could do everything we want, and we could even introduce new legislation. The reason why I'm trying to do this automated one is because the cost is upfront, and then we no longer need resources. We don't need people. We don't need anybody to do it. They don't have to chase them. They could just send a ticket in the mail. Now, people say it's going to take a while to get the tariff, but I'll tell you, if I got a red light ticket camera, which I have, that makes you know, don't go through a red light the next time you go through that, because it's hitting you in the pocket. It's just one thing that we could do. The other thing we could do is that, and that's basically based on noise, right? That's not illegal driving of ATVs. So the other thing we could do is come up with a scenario of how are we going to enforce it? Do we have details in certain places? We know where these people congregate and meet up. You know, why can't we don't need legislation to say, all right, let's put a detail out when they go and they go to congregate there. We know on social media where they're going. Why can't we then just be able to put a group of officers, whether they're marked or unmarked, in that facility and just cordon that off and make every vehicle be confiscated that's illegal?
Councilman, going back to, it sounds very much like what we were talking about in May and June with the ATV all city Zoom meetings, whereas, and I'm seeing it in the chat, people are frustrated with the mayor, frustrated with the silence, because if he doesn't deem it a priority, it's not a priority for anybody. So we're right back to where we started before, and we are fortunate that you're one of the most accessible, you know, public figures that we have in the city. But it's, if it's going to be an issue in 22, with who and how? The issue that the only political issue as far as voting and voter outpouring and frustration is one of our friends up on Broad Street is calling for a recall of the mayor. And that's been the one. I don't know that City Hall cares or grasps that out of this ATV frustration, there is growing a very strong coalition from Broad Street to our friends over in Logan Square. And because this is starting to become not only a quality of life, but an infringement on the city's ability to earn money.
Well, and again, it's not only ATV issue, right? I mean, if you can combine the other issues of lack of services, as far as even enforcement with homeless encampments and how we deal with addiction services on the streets, you know, how we look at, you know, how our trash is being picked up, how do we deal with 911 not answering the phones? I mean, I know people are frustrated. Nobody's more frustrated than us in this office, because you know who they call when these problems occur? They call our office, and we're out there trying to make inroads to try to make these changes. And we know they have to hire people. My problem was, why did we hire people when we saw that there was a shortage? Why weren't we looking at this before we knew, you know, we didn't have enough people to answer the phones? Why, when you call 911, that sometimes nobody answers? I heard from the police commissioner that, you know, just let it ring. Well, we had somebody who had a house that was set on fire today. They called 911 and nobody answered. You know, that time could have killed somebody, right? So you had to call back or call the district, or they called the firehouse to tell them there was a fire there. This, you know, this is a serious issue. And I know they say they're hiring folks, and I'm not here to throw people under the bus because I want to work with everybody. But it is what it is. And if it's not a priority, I mean, you could have every councilman in the city screaming and hollering about this, and it's not going to get done. We have laws on the books, and people say, well, what are you doing about it? We need to enforce the laws that are here. We need to just make sure those resources are available to the authorities so they can enforce them. I'm not saying chase everybody down and chase them all over, but there's ways to do this if we wanted to do it. It does sound exactly like it was 5 months ago or 6 months ago, right? So, you know, the frustration level on our part. Now, I wouldn't say every council member is on board with this, but this is spreading. You saw what happened up at Temple, right? On Broad Street, where they were doing spin-outs, burnouts in the middle of the street, blocking traffic so they could do that. Then they were shooting guns through the roof of the car. I mean, if you're creating a feeling of lawlessness and people feel like they can get away with it, they will continue to do this until we have enforcement. And I'm for diversionary programs. I'm for helping people who have challenges, but there are some people then need to be locked up or need to have their vehicles confiscated for doing the wrong thing. And that's what we have to get to. And we got to make it loud. I'm willing to scream with you and next to you. But we need to look at this in a way by joining forces. What you did at that one meeting was brilliant, I think, because it wasn't just a Queen Village Society Hill issue. This is a citywide issue. This issue of ATVs, noise coming from boom cars, amplified radios and modified mufflers is a problem citywide. And all it does is enable the people who can move, gives them a reason to move out of the city. And the people who are stuck here are going to be left with this, and we're not going to have the resources to deal with it if everybody who can move does. So I mean, I'm still open for ideas on how to force, you know, this issue. My idea is to keep introducing legislation, keep bringing it to the forefront, and making sure that this becomes a priority for everybody in the administration to deal with. You know, they told me that, you know, we have, you know, we're going to have over 500 murders. Well, we could do more than one thing at a time. We got to deal with the murders and we got to deal with the crime on the streets, but this is part of that. And, you know,
it sounds like what we're missing though is it's almost as though this endless circle of the noise, the illegal vehicles, the ATVs is starting to become a distraction, because just on this Zoom of 2 neighborhoods and any other guests from around the city who want to participate, you have 331 people participating because they care about their city. They want it to see improve. They want to help. They want to get involved, and the sincere growing frustration over City Hall just completely ignoring that is going to change that energy from how are we going to deal with ATVs if we're not going to get support, to how are we going to change leadership and not yours.
I mean, listen, we had the meeting last time. We invited the managing director's office. I mean, I don't know if we invited the managing director today. Obviously we didn't, but they didn't come, right? So to say that speaks volumes of what is important and what isn't important in the administration's philosophy. We have to use our bully pulpit to make this a major issue, and we are doing it, but it can't be just me, right? It can't be just Queen Village and Society Hill. We have to continue to roll this into a major crisis, which it is. I mean, and I see you have Police Captain at Appleton on there, and I'm not sure he can answer any of the questions about ATVs, but the concern is we need to make it a priority and have the administration tell our police leadership that this needs to be a priority, and then they will do it.
Mark, what is the priority for the administration? What are we up against? I mean, we can imagine that we know there's gun violence. We know there's, you know, serious economic problems, but what do you hear? When you raise this subject, I don't know if they've even picked up your phone call, but what are we up against? What are the priorities of this mayor?
Well, I'm going to say the biggest priority right now is gun violence, right? That is the biggest priority. Obviously, education is also a priority, and we need to address those issues. But, you know, when you start hearing people are afraid in their own neighborhoods, they won't come out of their homes. That, to me, sends a message to everybody. And I know people don't, administration-wise, don't want to talk about it. But if you're afraid to come out of your home as a resident, that tells you right now and then that this is a serious issue and we need to address it. Instead of saying, well, what do you want me to do? There's gun violence everywhere. That's not good enough, right? We invested a lot of money in violence prevention, which I'm very supportive of, right? We were giving grants out to groups who could help folks who need help. But there's also a group of people there who will not take the help. And those folks who won't take the help have to be locked up for committing crimes that they're committing. We not only have to lock them up, then we have to charge them with the proper crimes. We need people. My idea is to bring the police commissioner, the district attorney's office, the managing director's office in and work out a plan on how we address gun violence as far as enforcement is concerned. If you know you can commit a crime with a gun, and we're going to probably break the record with most gun arrests this year, but we'll probably have one of the least number of charges filed, pressed for that. So we need the district attorney and the mayor's office and the police commissioner to be on the same page for this to work. We need to bring them together with council, all work together. We could point fingers at each other and blame everybody, but we're still going to be in the same position. So my goal is to bring them together. We've had meetings with the district attorney and the courts because our goal is to bring drug court back, because what is happening now is anybody who's illegally using on the streets, and you see a lot of needles and syringes out there, we want to be able to detain them, bring them in, at least give them the ability to go to court so we can offer them a drug court, drug treatment. And if they decide they don't want that, then there's consequences to pay for that. And then you will be locked up. So these are ideas, but we need the district attorney and the courts to work on that. We're close. We've met with them twice. And, we're going to continue working on that. And we're hoping that before the end of the year, we can have drug court up and running so that we can then remove some of these people from the street and give them an opportunity to seek help instead of just asking them, do you want help or not? If they say no, just let them go. And that's what we're doing now. It's not working. Our population on the street is growing. In Kensington, which is part of the neighborhood that I represent up there, we started out with 43 on Gurney Street. And then 3 years ago, we had 300, and now we're over 800. So now we have 800 people living on the streets in Kensington. And, the city will say, oh, well, they're not all homeless. A lot of them are in addiction. Well, they're all homeless. They're living on the street. And how do you think those neighbors who work hard and pay taxes feel when they can't go outside because somebody's defecating on their sidewalk or dropping needles in the parks where they're going to take their kids and things like that? These are serious issues. Until we add enforcement to part of the plan to help people who have challenges, we're going to be in this position for another 2 years. And, we need to allow enforcement to take place and work with the district attorney, the police commissioner, the courts, and the managing director's office to make sure we're all pointing in the same direction. That's the only way this is going to be resolved. And we're trying to do that now. And we have meetings that have done that. Some of them haven't been productive, but at least we're getting to a point where people are talking to each other.
Mark, maybe you can comment specifically when it comes to violence. It's my understanding that when we receive American Rescue Plan funds from the federal government, we're allocating $43 million to give to grassroots organizations who really could make a difference on gun violence by those who are close to it, as opposed to simply national umbrella organizations on gun violence. How do you see that playing out? What's going on now?
First of all, if my plan works as far as getting everybody on the same page, and I got to say, with my colleague, Councilmember Sanchez, has been a big help with that. The plan is a key because that'll force the administration to get on board, right? If we could get the DA, the courts, the managing director's office, and the police commissioner to be on the same page, the mayor will come on. And, we're not saying that, all right, the mayor should be doing this. We're doing it, right? We're bringing these folks in. So if we can continue in that path, I think we'll see positive changes. But, unfortunately, it's been taking so long that the plan, the idea, and what do you see on the streets is getting worse. But as far as the money being spent, now I asked that because we saw that as one of the major questions to the administration. And they had told us that the ARPA funds that we received were used for revenue replacement, which means that the money that came to us from the federal government was replacing the funds that they had cut for previously to basically keep the existing funding levels the same. There's been a big increase in starting or looking to fund some of our private nonprofits to help us more with violence prevention, to be on the streets and doing some of that work. That money is just starting to be disseminated, and it's going to probably take a little bit of time to see the benefits of it. But what we pushed for, and I think is really important, is to put a a way to measure, a matrix to measure results. Right now, we spend a lot of money on a lot of organizations that do a lot of things, but are they collaborating with each other? Do we know how many people they're touching? Do we know what the outcomes are of those resources? What we've asked during these grant periods is to have these organizations report back data sets of people they touched and outcomes that are positive outcomes that we have. This is very important to see if that money's being spent wisely and if that money is actually going to good use. Now, again,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I wanted to pick up on that, the subject of money.
Okay.
You say we're getting the federal funds or replacement funds, and that is what it is. But you had talked to us several months ago about 20 sort of public safety quasi-police officers that could be put out on the streets that needed to be funded. Where do we stand on that?
Yeah, that we introduced legislation. Obviously, it was passed and voted on by the public. And the administration has said they're still trying to find resources to hire those individuals. As of maybe 3 weeks ago, there is still no push to hire those what I call quality of life not officers, but engagement representatives. And we are still not at a place where they are being hired or put into the mix to help offset some of these challenges that we have. And I mean, as you know, with the police department, they are historically low on numbers. A lot of people have retired through job, and there's been a lot of early retirements. And it's hard to fill some of our classes to increase the number of officers that we have in the city of Philadelphia. So but as it stands right now, there's still a commitment to hire these folks, but we haven't seen the resources put in place to make those hires possible at this time.
Are we to assume that the 1.4 billion can't somehow fund that?
Absolutely, right? I mean, listen, we have a $5 billion budget, right? 1.4 billion is like a quarter of that, right? We know that during the pandemic, we did lose some resources and made drastic cuts. But we also know that that money can do more than just replace existing budget holes that we've had. There's a push from council members to look at money for commercial corridors. How do we invest in commercial corridors to get them back up and running? How do we make them safe? That's a very, very big push moving forward. So I think that's a way to spend some of those dollars. But again, we're hoping when I asked the administration about the spend of the $1.4 in federal funds, the answer basically was that it was a replacement for recurring costs that they've had, and basically you'll see no additional changes.
Eleanor, I know you wanted to bring Captain Appleton into the conversation. Why don't you take over from that?
Before we do that, as we talk about money, I just want to circle back to the issue, the multi-pronged issue of the ATVs, illegal vehicles, and the noise problem. Rick Piper writes that there have been 682 theater subscriptions that were canceled this week in one of the largest theaters in town. 43% were not for COVID. It was for being afraid to go to Center City. That's a $163,000 loss in ticket revenues, plus all the dining and parking, et cetera. So it just bears the weight that we need some strategic creativity in how to balance all of these things, being the 5th largest city in the country and being with a history of innovation, but also a history of dropping the ball. So as we, I did want to ask you, Councilman, and we can come back to it, about zoning, because there are a lot of zoning issues that seem to be on the plate. But I am going to invite Captain Appleton on because you've lived, heard, and understood probably firsthand everything that's been discussed and all the frustrations and complaints from the city at large, because we are suffering like a 911 call response and deployments right now in the city. And that's rocking a lot of people to the core, because it's one of those things that's paid into, and you expect that when you call and you're in crisis, that the phone is going to be picked up, and shortly after you're going to see a police officer. I understand that the communications department was authorized for 353 dispatchers, but are hovering around 100 less than that. Can you explain the circumstances and conditions around that?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Excuse me. So last year with COVID, we had a class that was ready to go in March, and because of COVID, that class was canceled. We had to push off the class until the summer. It was July when they eventually got in. And then we were able to do other classes during the year, but it was slow. It was very slow to hire. We had to keep class size small. So as we started to lose people, as we opened up last year through attrition, we were unable to replace them, and our numbers got very low compared to historical norms. This year we have 3 classes that have been put through so far. We're anticipating doing 2 more this year, and the 2 more that we expect to do this year are going to be the biggest that we've done. So we're expecting 2 classes of 36 dispatchers for each. If we're able to do that by the end of the year, we're going to be doing much better staffing wise. Another thing that plays into this is call volume. Last year, when we were not able to hire because of COVID, call volume dropped dramatically during that lockdown. So it really it helped us out quite a bit. As we progressed, and especially into this year as we opened up, call volume increased, especially as we got into the warmer months. Historically, it's, during the seasonal warmer periods, you see call volume go up. We saw the same thing this year. And that's one of the things that really gave us a problem with being able to answer 911 calls in a timely manner. And that's what everybody's been experiencing, especially, from, I would say, spring through the summer, and occasionally it's still going on based on certain shifts that we're having trouble filling. Another thing that happened around this time was we added more to the call length. So we had the questions that we had to ask for COVID. We had to make sure officers on the street knew that any place they were going to may have someone that was sick with COVID. We also, at the end of the year, started using the mental crisis script. And both of those things added to the amount of time that we're on each 911 call. Now that we've had a revision of that script, we're not as involved with the script as we were, but we're also seeing an increased call time just because most likely we had a big increase in a number of people that are new. So they're still learning the job, and it's going to take some time until they're able to do things as quickly as the people that they've replaced that either retired or went on to other jobs. So, I anticipate that as we get into the cooler time of the year, we're going to see call volume go down. During that same time, we're going to see our staffing levels increase. And we're looking at potentially another revision of the mental crisis script to try to really just only include the questions that we absolutely need. And so the goal is that as we move forward, you're going to see less of a wait time for 911. And then potentially, if we get those 2 big 36 member classes, that by spring of next year, we're really in a much better position than we are today.
I'm hearing you say that you're having trouble filling positions. Is there any thought to allowing non-residents of Philadelphia to come and fill some of these positions?
Well, so our hiring process hasn't changed here. We're still hiring the same way we were, with the exception of, and I'm not involved in the hiring process, so I can't speak too much about it, but I assume that the only thing that changes, we now have to abide by the city council ordinance where you have to hire residents from within Philadelphia. I don't know that we're having the same issue on the the police side is having. So, and I don't know, maybe that's specifically what your question was. Keep in mind that here in radio, we're hiring civilian personnel that are police communications dispatchers that work interchangeably on the dispatch side or the call taking side. So that's separate from people going through the police academy. They're the folks that become police officers. We have a different hiring process and hire from different lists. The thing that was difficult last year was everyone was working from home. It was, you couldn't get large groups into rooms. It was a slower process for a lot of different reasons. The class that we put in July, that worked out just because they were all ready to go in March, and we were not able to train them in March because of the COVID lockdowns. So when we were able to actually have classroom training again, those folks, they were ready to go. Classes after that became problematic, but then this year we've been hiring at a pretty good pace. I think our staffing levels bottomed out early spring, so probably about May, and we've been building since then, and it shows in how long people are waiting to get through to 911. Now we do have some days of peak call volumes. There's some days where call volume is very high, comparable to other days. And that's not necessarily associated with any major events in the city. So those days are definitely difficult. And there's definitely some shifts where, because of how we are training the new trainees, that it's difficult to find all the coverage we would like to have. So, you look at those shifts, it's sometimes the wait is longer to get through 911.
One thing I've heard is that it's very important to only call once. And yes, the ringing is inexcusable, but it's kind of that there are a lot of factors to consider, because you're trying to recruit people who are civilians to do this. Is it tough to get them because of outreach, pay, training? Because if you're the one instance I understood was that the training may have changed, and so a lot of people are the operators are humans too, and dealing with frustrations and conditions that can be difficult. So if you could give, because communication is key, and people just knowing what the circumstances are, is there anything you can share about that?
Yeah, this is a difficult job, and it's difficult for the dispatchers, the supervisors, everybody that works here in radio has a difficult job. The dispatcher specifically, if you're working on the call taking side, you might handle at this point 100 to 200 calls during your 8-hour tour. The trainees, they're starting about $39,000. The full pay, including a raise from this current contract, the full pay dispatchers are making just under $50,000. So it's not a high paying job, and it's a stressful job. I mean, I think if you do it and you stay doing it, you do it because you want to help people, and you really, in a lot of ways, get that satisfaction because people are calling you for help, and you can help them get that help. But that also leads to burnout. So we have, especially during times of low staffing, we have people that we rely on more, and low staffing, not just because we had people leave, not just because we can't hire, but also because we had people quarantined due to COVID. We never worked from home. We never had that ability. So we had to come in every day. We worked in close proximity with each other. I know during the last year and a half, I actually worked more hours in the office than I probably would have otherwise. And the same thing for everybody else. So I think when you add it all up, it makes it a tough job to hire, for number one, but then also to keep people long term.
Captain, I'm sorry, can I ask one question? Because I heard this and I guess we could verify it. But also, is it true that the 911 callers are now going through like the mental health check? And if there's any social services needed to go as part of their questioning, and maybe are on the phone longer? Is that something that is true?
So they definitely are on the phone longer. We're asking the questions from the behavioral health script. That's the script that I said that was implemented in November of last year. It was lengthy. It was reduced since then. In about April, it was reduced to about half the length that it initially was. We're hoping that within the next few months, we're going to reduce it a little bit more. As far as
Excuse me,
What
how
they're doing-
long is a script? How long does that take?
Well, so, I mean, if you were looking at it on a page, it's about a half a page worth of questions, and I think it's about 6 questions at this point. But the thing is, when you ask the first question, if you get a yes answer to any part of that first question, then you go through the rest of the script. So that's the trigger to get into the script. If you get a no answer to that first question, then you move on with other information you need for the call. Once you get a yes answer to any question on the script, you then tag that job. So then on the dispatch side, we can dispatch either CIT, crisis intervention trained officers, or the teams with the officers with the behavioral health professional that are working, during certain times. So this way we can make sure that we deploy the right resources to that job.
Captain, I just want to pass a question to you that's interesting from Ashley Pesco asking, is there any way for Philadelphia to collaborate and share resources with neighboring jurisdictions or state police to answer 911 calls until staffing can increase for dispatchers? And I don't know if that's something you can answer, or maybe the councilman, I'm not sure.
No, I can answer it. So not at this point, but moving forward, there's the next generation 911 that's in the planning phases, and it's going to be rolled out soon to different jurisdictions. And part of that is, like failover to different call centers. So if you have a high volume of calls, like for instance, last year when at the end of May, beginning of June, we had a volume I've been here 2 years. It's volume that I've never seen before or since. And there's just no way that our call center is equipped to handle that volume. So going forward, once next generation 911 is implemented, they have regional assets are putting in place that will allow us to fail over to other call centers and vice versa. You will have that ability, but right now we don't.
When does that due? Next generation 911?
That's undetermined.
Okay. And I'm going through to see if there are any other questions. So Larry, if you have another one, as I scan the chat. I guess mainly if we want people to understand that it's an undeniably frustrating time for everybody, but the call center dispatchers are really trying to help people to manage the call volume, to expedite things as quickly as possible. If you had a parting comment for people to remember, to understand, to bolster spirits, by all means, please share it.
Well, like I said, I think the way we're headed, looking at the path we're on when it comes to hiring, when it comes to seasonal call volume, when it comes to modifying the script, that things are aligning well for us, and that we're going to have less and less of these long waits for 911 calls. So I think that, very soon you're going to see that if you call 911, chances are good you won't encounter that. And then I think by February of next year that you really won't encounter that at all. People should keep in mind, though, that there's a difference between how long it takes to get through to 911 and then how long it takes to see an officer on the street. So there are two different things. What I'm really talking about is the number of 911 call takers. And as those numbers go up and as call volume drops, I think it'll be much easier to get through to a 911 call taker. You won't see those times where you can. I can't say the same thing for wait times to get officers to the scene. It depends on the job that you're calling about. If you're calling about a non-emergency, say a report of a theft or something like that, that's something that you could have a considerable wait for police to respond to. Obviously, if you call 911 and after that call, something else happens that changes the type of event, you should call 911 back. If you have some new information that can't wait until police get there, you should call 911 back. Otherwise, you should expect that it may be a longer wait to get police out there, and you may have to wait. Most importantly, when you do call, don't hang up. If you hang up, you go to the end of the line. And then, you have to start over every time you call. It's important to know your location. So this way, when the call taker does pick up the phone, you're able to give the location and relay what's going on with at your location. It's important that if you have something that you think is maybe not an emergency and you just need city services, try 311 first. If you need streets department or L&I, you can always start with 311. If you need police, you can always call them. So
If you see activity on the street, whether it's as a result of a person being homeless or in that general category, who do you call and what can you expect in terms of a response? Are there the mental health units now out there to help this problem?
So you can call 911. We do have, like I mentioned, the critical incident response teams. That's a police officer and a mental health professional. Now it's in the pilot phases. So, based on where you live and everybody in this call should pretty much fit into that area. And based on the time you're calling, they may or may not be working, but as that's rolled out, there'll be more availability of those folks. So, yeah.
Well, it may not be the exact answer everyone wanted to hear, but the takeaways is that it's actively being pursued to get the people trained, get the numbers up, and there's hope by early spring that we'll be back up to 911 capacity for the dispatch center. Correct?
Well, for the call taking side. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I would say February, because by then the last class that we hope goes into December will be in the room answering 911 calls. And that's, once again, those last two classes are going to be big classes. So that they'll really boost our numbers quickly.
Excellent. Captain Appleton, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And maybe if you want to stay on just in case any questions come up before the end of the meeting, I appreciate it.
I will be here.
Councilman
Did you want to
Squilla.
address zoning?
I'm sorry?
You wanted to address zoning?
Absolutely, absolutely. Councilman Squilla, there are a couple of very interesting zoning issues going on right now. First and foremost, the call for an adjustment of the zoning board of adjustments, which would require a referendum to increase the board from 5 to 7, professionalize criteria for certain seats, and impose civic council approval for positions currently appointed by the mayor. I wanted to get your thoughts on this and its viability.
I mean, obviously, this is an important subject. It's not as important of everything we've been talking about with the quality of life and safety issues, but I'm very supportive of making this more transparent board and also having professionals on the board who can look at these projects in a way to see how, if there is a variance request, how hardship would be granted on each individual project based one by one. By right projects, it still does not affect that. So if there's still a by right project, I would say if people had concerns about them, then we should relook at mapping the area. I know we just redid one with Society Hill not too long ago. It was a long process, and that remapping sort of ensures what the community thinks can be built by right there.
But the problem too is that the ZBA has stepped in on even overlays that have happened. So my question is to you is why does Councilman Clark think it's necessary to what would be the proper word for it to
I think it make it more transparent. I think what they're looking at is that, I know people are looking at it as a power grab from the mayor. The mayor right now gets to appoint all the board members of the ZBA. And so some of the complaints we're getting from some residents is that council wants that authority so they could better dictate what plans get approved and what plans do not get approved. I don't think that's the case. I think we may get to approve these folks, but we're looking at their credentials and why they should be on the zoning board. And it's still an independent body who will act separately from council. We do send a letter to ZBA hearings. So when we do that, we usually work with the community group who's being impacted by it, and usually send the same fairly similar letter than they do to the zoning board requesting whether the support or opposition of that project. So I think all this does is it doesn't give the council the authority to dictate the outcome, but it gives us the ability to look and make sure that the zoning board is being transparent and that the people on that board are professionals, and not that the current people aren't, but that people would have confidence in them making a proper decision independent from council and independent from a developer's viewpoint.
Transparent is very kind of you, because the words I saw used was that the board is flagrantly violated the law by granting zoning variances without any demonstration of hardship by the developer, and far too often dismissed community's legitimate issues raised by its neighbors. So it is, and I'm sure Larry can attest to, there's whenever you're working at the neighborhood level on these zoning issues, there's always that caveat of how is the ZBA going to handle this? What do we need to do to make sure we still have a say in what happens? So transparent is nice. It's good. It's also seems overdue.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
For the people.
listen, obviously, depending on who the mayor selects in past boards, I'm not sure if past boards will look differently than the current board was. So even when we go through this process, is there going to be people on there that maybe grant things that we don't agree with? Most likely, the board has to be independent of us. And, people hate councilmanic prerogative, right? So if the council member says, I oppose something, they're opposing it representing the community. So we want that to be opposed. But sometimes the zoning board goes and overrides that. And so, the challenge is, how do we get people to listen? And we understand that you're supposed to clear a hardship to get a variance. So if we could argue the hardship, long as the argument is proper and you're arguing what the variance refusal was, and we could prove that there is no hardship there, then the board should be able to go with what the community and council member wants in that case. Sometimes, in some projects, the community is split down the middle, right? Sometimes half the people want something and the other half don't want it. So you have to make a decision based on that. And the zoning board is going to have to do the same thing. But at least it's done with people who are looking at it as an independent body and seeing if they meet the criteria for a hardship. And so, I support it wholeheartedly. What we're supporting is a change in the home rule charter so that this could be put on a ballot so that the residents can vote if they agree with us on this. And that if that's the case, then it would go into effect.
When can we expect to see that on the ballot? Is it for this November?
Well, I don't think we will have it done in time for November. So I think it would probably be in May. It is a possibility we still have to have a public hearing on it. Then after the public hearing, obviously we'll pass it. I'm not sure how the mayor is going to handle that. If he vetoes it, then we would need to override it. So that'll have to play out, and depending on how long that takes to play out is depending on if it'll be in this year's ballot or not.
Mark, speaking of ballot, sort of a two-part question. How do you see the mayoral campaign shaping up? Be as specific as you can. And on that same point, have you called Batman?
Well, we had some flashing lights out there, but nobody came to help. But that's the easy one. But everybody on council, I think, is running for mayor. So it's going to be interesting because in Philadelphia, if you run for another elected office, if you are currently elected, you have to resign your office. So it's kind of hard to tell really who's running and who's not running because people have to give up their job once they announce. I think there's very strong candidates out there. I think from what I'm hearing, you have the controller, Rebecca Reinhardt. You have Maria Canona Sanchez. You have Helen Gims' name mentioned, Alan Dom's names mentioned. You have Sherelle Parker. And you have somebody who's already running in the, I'm drawing a blank on his name from ShopRite, but Brown.
Brown.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
Brown.
Jeff Brown. I don't know why that eluded me, but so there's going to be Derek Green possibly.
Is
It's
your
kind
name
of
on
hard.
the list as well?
No, I'm not running for mayor. I'm not running for mayor. I'm running for city council. I mean, there's a lot of things that we need to fix in the city. There's a lot of projects that need to come to fruition. I really would love to see our Capt over Delaware Avenue completed. I really want to get a handle on our homeless and opioid epidemic that we have here and how we engage our community. So there's a lot of work yet to be done. And I think the best way to do that in an area is a district council person. Now, I am frustrated with the administration's non-ability to want to enforce certain things, but there's also some members on council who may go along with that. And so I think the best fight is to get a unified council. And if we have 5 or 6 council members running, we're not only going to have a new mayor, we're going to have a whole new council. And, depending on where that goes and what direction the pendulum swings, it could be totally different, 4 years, 2 years from now. And, talking about these issues are very important. To make these issues, we need to make these issues that everybody's talking about now main issues for the next election, even though nobody's running, but everybody's getting ready to run. They have to be able to answer, what are they going to do? And if they're not part of the plan to bring people together to get the administration, the DA, and the mayor's office and the courts all on the same page, then we need to find people who are willing to do that. Again, maybe I'm being selfish because that's the only way I see this happening and this changing. So that's the only plan that I have. I'm willing to listen to other plans. But I know one thing, and like I said, I'm for diversion and programs to help people in need, but I'm also for enforcement. We have to have both. We have to continue to enforce the rules that are currently on the books for us to get out of the doldrums that we're in.
Absolutely. And very, very good to get it on record that you will be running for council again.
Oh, absolutely. I'm running, and you'll probably see me out there canvassing at some point and knocking on doors. And, there's a lot of new people in my district. Obviously, I know we didn't speak about it, but, there's redistricting happening. I'm not sure how my district is going to change. It's obviously the biggest district now in the city. So I have to shrink geographically. Not sure where I shrink from, but, at this point, that'll depend on, where we're out knocking on doors. But at the end of the day, we work for the residents. And I know it doesn't seem that way currently when people are screaming and clamoring for answers, but, we work for you. The residents pay our salary. We need to be able to address the issues that are most important to the folks who are living in the district. And if we can't, then it's time, to vote for somebody else. And, everybody deserves to run for office and have ideas. And maybe there's better ideas out there that will help change all these things. So I'm more than willing to, work with folks to make that happen, but also know that, some things we're just not able to do or have the ability to do. But I know we could be your mouthpiece, and we could be your voice, and we will continue to scream and holler about these issues to make sure that people know it. And again, this issue, I know people will say, oh, it's just Queen Village and Society Hill, and they're privileged and they think they should get everything, all the attention, and you do everything for them. All right, but that's not the case. This is an issue in every part of my district, from lower South Philly, all the way up through Harrogate, Kensington, Port Richmond, Fishtown, and Chinatown. So this is an issue for everybody, and we need to address it. And we got to make sure everybody who's running is able to address it and how they're going to deal with these issues moving forward.
And
Well said, Mark. Thank you.
yes,
I want to turn it over to Eleanor to wrap up, but I want to say to our audience.
before we wrap up, is
Go
there a
ahead.
wrap up comment you're doing? I just needed to get an answer from you, Councilman Squilla. It was the second part of the zoning, in that there certain council members are already I want to make sure I get the word correctly. For the mixed income housing zoning bonuses, they are suspending them in the 5th district, and I also believe Councilman Johnson's district. And that is the bonus designed to incentivize developers to build affordable housing, but often ends up being an in-kind payment to the Housing Trust Fund in exchange for building larger and denser projects. We are dealing with this in Queen Village at 1015 South 3rd Street. So my question to you is, not that it would happen in time for this, what is your position on the mixed income housing zoning bonuses and what their future should be?
Yeah, obviously, I believe in affordable housing. We need to make sure affordable housing is tried to put in every project that's designed and built in. I'm a little curious of why they're doing that, because we have a bill that is pending legislation that changes that, that increases the lieu of payment to make it astronomical so that you can't pay in lieu of putting the units in. So I'm kind of curious to why that happened. I mean, the bill that Councilmember Sanchez introduced with Jamie Gauthier actually made it almost impossible to pay into the Housing Trust Fund in order to get the affordable bonus.
What's the status of that bill then?
Well, it's pending legislation, so it is you cannot use what that developer used on South 3rd Street without paying it. And by paying that type of money, it'll make that project not feasible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to say I think it is already fixed, but
Okay.
I believe in affordable housing. I think we need to either make it a part where it's in every development. I mean, DC has it where if you build in any new development, you have to have 10% affordability based put into your portfolio. And so that's baked in. So people know when they're building, they have to do that automatically. So it's either that or sort of what Maria did, where saying, all right, if you really want to pay all that money, your project has to be, pretty good in order to do that, to get those several extra units there. And because we did see that in a couple, we have one in Port Richmond currently that used the bonus paid into, used the fresh grocer bonus and built higher and overbuilt an area that was not intended by those bonuses. So I think that those bonuses need to be fixed. And if they can't be fixed, then there has to be something that would say, all right, it's required. And if it's required, then there's no bonuses. But to actually remove it right now, I'm not sure why, because I think the mixed income bonus allows people to live together in a community, and you don't have just all low income people in one neighborhood and all high income people in
Oh,
another.
you're absolutely right, but it was the whole idea that the bonus actually cemented that, where here is the in-kind payment for low-income housing wherever the city wants to put it elsewhere.
Right.
But they're jam packing. I can't even remember. Lucy probably has it off the top of her head, but an exorbitant amount of apartments on South 3rd that they were able to do because they got the height and they got the build out because of the bonuses. So it's not that the idea behind the bonuses is bad. It's that the implementation in its current form is.
And I agree. And I think the one bonus is actually removed, right? The fresh grocer bonus is no longer available. So that one is removed, but the affordable bonus is now put into a lieu of payment is extraordinarily high, and forces the people, because we were on a meeting where I don't remember. Oh, it was Wash West, where the person said we could have did this, but they changed the payment in lieu of, and therefore we can't use the affordable bonus. And so Wash West was saying, well, I guess that's not working. I said, no, it's working exactly what the intent is, where if you can't afford to pay into the Housing Trust Fund that amount of money, then you have to put the units in if you want to use the bonus. So, we have to look at it in a way that will guarantee affordable bonus, affordable housing. And I'm not ready to cut my nose off to spite my face to say, we don't want to use this option. I might have said that before this was introduced, but right now I'm going to say that I would stick with what's there. And, you know, time will tell. There's always unintended consequences, right? The fresh grocery bonus was supposed to be for food deserts, but it was used in Society Hill, you know, Port Richmond, Queen Village, where you had plenty of grocery stores. And so there's sometimes unintended consequences to a good idea. And I think that's what happened here, even with the affordable bonus. It was to try to build affordability and to build up our housing trust fund, but it enabled some overbuilds in areas that really became a detriment to the surrounding community.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I'll pass it back to you, Larry. I didn't mean to.
Yes, I just want to tell our audience that, you know, we've done our best to ask questions that go to the most widespread and serious problems. We've had hundreds of questions on other issues ranging from endless theft, drugs, sinkholes, bicycles, rerouting traffic. So we couldn't get everything in that we could today, but I do want to commend both Captain Appleton and Councilman Squilla for doing a fantastic job of trying to respond. Obviously, these issues are very troublesome, and they're the ones that we have to keep chipping away at them. So we appreciate them. We thank them. Eleanor?
I want to say one thing too, that I want to thank you guys for being a part of this conversation, because there's a lot of questions that might not have been answered, but if you get them and you want to forward them to us, or we could forward them to the police, however you want to do that, and at least get the people answers. They took enough time to come and listen to this meeting, and not everybody got the answers that they wanted or got their question answered. To be happy to go through those questions if you want to put them in some type of format, and then we could send the answers back to you and you can disseminate them to the public.
We will do our best for that. We love having our joint meetings, Larry and I, because when I tell you, all chat will tell us is there's an excess of 99 messages, and I've seen that at least 3 or 4 times. So there are lots, and we'll see if we can comb through and find some really pointed ones to circulate. I also want to echo Larry in thanking you so much, Captain Appleton, and of course, Councilman Squilla, for joining us. There were some tough questions, but the main source of these community meetings is to share information and keep communication open, because that's probably the most frustrating when your leader ghosts you, as many feel by Mayor Kenny. But I want to thank you both for joining us tonight, and I look forward to having you back in the future should we need to. That would be a wonderful thing. I do want to say that is with a heavy heart tonight that I inform you all of the loss of one of our treasured neighbors, Kathy Conway, who's succumbed to a very private battle with cancer, passed away today, surrounded by her family. A QVNA Board Emeritus member, Kathy served with the organization near its beginnings and helped to champion causes like the defeat of the Crosstown Coalition, as well as cheerleading community engagement for the neighborhood she so loved. To say her generosity of spirit will be missed is surely an understatement. When information becomes available about services for Kathy Conway, we will be sure to share that. Our deepest sympathy goes out to her family tonight. But I do have to say that Kathy would want us to share with you, for the neighborhood and the community organization she helped build, that we will be having elections in November, and we have 2 a secretary and a treasurer position and 4 director positions open. So we welcome you to get involved if you are in the spirit of Kathy Conway and for what she helped build here, and you believe in the kind of information we're trying to get out and share with neighbors. Please come out, please get involved. Nominations close on the 20th of October, and you can find out more information on our website. I thank you both, everybody, for their time, both of our guests, my co-host, my co-civic leader, Larry Spector. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next month when we will be doing a community meeting on redistricting that the councilman mentioned.